and wasn't going to tolerate this.
People came saying that they were coming to the mother country. Now, it seems to me that from the personal kind of anecdote I've heard, was that there was always a suspicion. Would it really be this mother that would be welcoming? Because mothers, anyway, can sometimes reject you. But nevertheless, they came. And they came, obviously, and there was a shock. I mean, I think there was a tremendous shock at the lack of welcome. Then, of course, we're born into that. It's a generation that's born into that unwelcome, born into that denial of our right to be of this land. And there's some continuity of experience, clearly. But I think what's fundamentally different is that for our parents, they always had another land to know in their memory. They always had another way of living that could be both a source of pain because they couldn't return to it, or perhaps didn't want to, and also, though, a sense of saying, it's okay, we can be. We don't only live in a place where all you see is white people who you are told are the very antithesis of you.
When one thinks about the difference between nationalism and racism, which seem to me to have completely different origins, in fact, you can tell them very quickly apart in the sense that all nations have on the books in one form or another a procedure which we call naturalization. It's not always easy. Some nations make it very difficult, but in fact all nations accept the idea that they can include people from the outside. Whereas the racist imagining is that one is eternally contaminated. One has a black ancestor, one has a Jewish ancestor somewhere. It's always going to be there in the blood and can never be escaped. And similarly, you can't sort of naturalize yourself as a white in the way that you can do it in terms of nationality.
Political changes may reshape British national identity, challenging the fragile unity of the United Kingdom. But as a new wave of violence redraws the map of Europe, one thing is clear. Nationalism is already staking its claim on the 21st century.
Britain has surrendered, through joining the European community, certain areas of national sovereignty. In signing the Anglo-Irish Agreement, also surrendered certain areas of national sovereignty. There's no doubt about that. And that's seen as, I suppose, a gradual sort of rolling process which will create a different kind of reality where it's not that any citizen is absolutely one thing or the other, but which actually responds to the fact that all of us personally are mosaics of different bits and pieces of culture.
Well, if Scotland does achieve independence in Europe, as the slogan is, it will obviously make a big difference to the psychology of the Scottish nation. People will feel more able to be in command of their own affairs, which I think can only be a good thing. It might also be a very good thing for other parts of the United Kingdom, it seems to me, because over-centralization has been one of the grave faults, it seems to me, of the Westminster setup. And this will maybe give the English an impulse or a kick where possibly they might need it to look after in regions of England their own affairs. Why not?
Who we are is very mixed up, and who we can be is open. Doesn't have to be determined by some kind of preordained national history, you know, that will determine where we go from there.
It seems to me that nationalism is here to stay until there is some deep change in consciousness which would be parallel to the changes of consciousness that brought it into being in the beginning, at the end of the 18th century and early 19th century. A whole deep way of thinking about the world and feeling the world, because nationalism is also feeling. If you could use the analogy of language, nationalism isn't really words. it isn't even really sentences. What it is grammar. It's syntax. It's what you think through. It's what you talk out of. And changing grammar, changing syntax is a very slow process and a very deep process.